text messages, and SMS can only handle it's not the greatest. It can only send like some text letters, and you can use MMS with some phones to add images maybe, but that's it really, you can't do very much with SMS. It's extremely limited text messaging service.
Well, because it was basically a system that was itself just piggybacking on like unused metadata channels on the cell network.
This was designed for people who were using, Nokia phones that didn't even have, keyboards or touchscreens. Yeah. Using like T9, right? So anyway, that's still the system that current smartphones are using to do text messages. So Apple decided to solve that problem by making iMessage. And the way they have iMessage is like a standalone messaging system that has, you don't need to use it with a phone at all. Like if you just have a Mac or an iPad and you have Wi-Fi, you can do iMessage with people just like you could do AOL Instant Messenger or Google Chat or WeChat, or it's just a normal internet chat service with actually lots of features. It's end-to-end encrypted, and it has a fancy, clever way of backing up to iCloud, and that may or may not be encrypted. And you can send stickers and emojis and reactions and all voice messages. It's fully featured. It may be if not it's one of the best message DM systems, at least. Yep. It's not it does FaceTime with the group videos and it's fancy.
But if even one person you're talking to in a group,
right? So on an iPhone, if you text someone, right, using SMS, but they have an iPhone also, it's very clever, and it says, "Aha! I see you both have iPhones, and you're trying to use SMS. Let's use iMessage instead," and it just does, right? And now that chat is an iMessage chat, even though you were trying to text them at their phone number. And it doesn't go over SMS. It goes over iMessage instead. You don't really know. The only way you know the difference is because all the text messages are blue. And in that chat, you could do all sorts of fancy iMessage things. And even if you add a ton of people to the chat, as long as they all have Apple devices, it's still going to work, right? So let's say you you add to the group chat, or you text someone with an iPhone and they don't have an Apple device, and you send them an SMS. Well, it uses SMS, which doesn't have a lot of features, and that's when you see the green bubbles, right? And so Android people using Android phones, when they chat with each other, right, they could use SMS, I guess, if they wanted to, but they actually use this newer, more up-to-date system called RCS, right, which is an open standard. Anyone who wanted to can make a phone that talks RCS.
Yep.
And it's basically just SMS, but way better with a lot more features.
Now, we always assumed, Apple wouldn't give a shit about this because they have their own better thing.
Right. So Android people, when they chat with each other, are using RCS, and it's kind of a similarly fancy chat. Maybe not quite as fancy as iMessage, but modernly fancy, right? But if you cross the streams, you're basically downgrading to the lowest common denominator, which is SMS, really basic chat that's sad. And so today, Apple announced, no one thought this would ever happen, that they're going to support RCS sometime.
The first line of this article is great. I'm just going to quote it. Apple is shocking the world today by adopting the RCS messaging standard for iMessage.
Yep. This is partly because of pressure from the EU, which has been putting a lot of pressure on Apple to do.
I gotta say,
lately.
10% of the time, the EU oversteps into weird regulation, like France being weird about cell phone, quote, radiation again, even though there's no evidence that's a thing.
There's some. Anyway.
Yeah, but not the thing they're talking about.
Well, anyway.
There's almost none, actually, and most of the evidence is for phones that don't exist anymore.
A lot of the studies I saw that were saying, it's one of those things where it's like I don't really know 100% what to believe yet, but I was bothered by the fact that I looked at the studies that said there is a problem and the ones that said there isn't. And the one that said there isn't were mostly from conflict of interested parties, like phone manufacturers.
There's lots of medical
and said there were a problem tended to be from academics, and I was like,
But a lot of ones that are more focused from a physics standpoint seem to make the point that the evidence doesn't show it, partly because there's no understandable mechanism of how it could cause a problem.
Well, regardless, the actual topic at hand.
But yeah, like 90% of the time, the EU is pushing good regulations that are forcing the US and global companies to catch up to modern best practices.
Anyway, so they're going to support RCS. We don't know for sure exactly what this is going to look like, but what I'm going to guess is going to happen is that you're still going to have on iPhones the blue bubbles and the green bubbles, right? Because obviously the Android people aren't going to start talking in iMessage, right? And sending memojis and FaceTimes. But what'll happen, I guess, is that the green bubble mode will be significantly upgraded to be on par with basically what Android people have when they chat with each other, right? So it's like, so will iPhone people still be mad and want to not chat, not add an Android person to the group chat? Or will it be good enough that they'll be like, okay, green bubbles aren't actually so bad. We'll let you in the group chat with your Android phone, but iMessage is still different and better? Because really, people are mostly using stickers and reactions and voice chats, and I don't know how many of those things RCS supports.
Yep. I mean, I don't use any of that stuff. I chat on Discord and WhatsApp, and I don't really use SMS except talking to individual old people.
Yeah, I don't think people care about the emojis that much.
Nah. I do think people will still have a big, weird issue about it, but I'm going to say this charitably, basic people who are being weird and classist about their iPhones.
I don't know. But anyway, it's still a good thing that, the closed walled garden people are adapting a open protocol, interoperability, et cetera. So it's a positive development. At the very least, right, regardless of what it means for the iPhone people, it means for the Android people that when they chat with an iPhone person, they're not limited to just SMS. They can use all the things that they're used to in the Android messaging app. And they won't know the difference, right? It's only the iPhone people will notice a difference.
But anyway, things of the day. So what I appreciate about my thing of the day, this video, it's called The Insane Engineering of the F-16, so the fighter jet. But it doesn't really focus on or even really talk about at all the military weapons fighting aspects of the F-16. It is a pure exploration of the physics and the aviation of this amazing machine that can take a human into the sky and fly around, and how utterly nuts it is that the F-16 even exists. It's also a nice baby's first introduction to the concept of energy maneuverability theory, which is basically the underpinning of all modern energetic aviation, shall we say. But the video is just a really detailed explanation of how this tiny little thing can fly around the way it does, and what massive advancements in the understanding of physics, the understanding of flight, and the understanding of how humans interact with the user experience of piloting things. The F-16 was one of the most revolutionary jets to have ever been developed on Earth. That's it. It's pretty cool. I've been into fighter jets lately.
Yeah, I mean, so the everybody, even if you're not a supercomputery person, about different image files, right? JPEGs, GIFs, pings, bumps, AVIFs,
WebPs.
Right? Yeah, all these different ways, and it's kind of annoying, I guess, for the average person for there to be so many image formats in the world, but there is a good reason for that, because they do serve different purposes.
Yeah, a lot of them are obsolete, effectively.
That's true.
But they're usable. It's funny, there was, in the oldest days, there were a million formats, partly because computers weren't that good yet, and they had to be hyper specific to a particular use case. And then there was the era where there's basically just bitmaps, JPEGs, PNGs didn't really even exist yet. There weren't that many file formats most people knew about. And then there's a lot again.
Yeah, anyway. So if you have image programs on your computer, even if it's not Photoshop, if it's the GIMP or anything else, right, they can usually handle lots and lots of different image formats. There's a very large number of open image formats that basically all software that displays and edits images can handle.
Yep.
And it's not really a problem for most people. But what if you have, like Rim said, an ancient computer? We're not talking an old DOS computer, we're talking
a Commodore 128.
Yeah, an Apple II, an Amiga, something, you have Mac Paint on your Mac Plus, like I have in the corner over there. It's you can draw images and save them in Mac Paint on a Mac Plus, just like I have.
Yeah, that's not outputting a JPEG.
It cannot do a JPEG or a bump or a GIF or pretty much any kind of file that any kind of Photoshop or anything can read at all.
Bumps used to be state of the art, like advanced new computer image formats.
Yeah, those files can be read by a Mac with Mac Paint or an emulator running Mac Paint. It's like that's it. However, here, my thing of the day, there is a library, RECOIL, the Retro Computer Image Library, which, if you use this software, you can, on your modern, normal computer with normal operating system, handle, interpret, display, etc., a vast number of truly ancient image formats.
I have heard of maybe 1% of these as I'm looking through the list.
Yeah, it's like even like they handle a PlayStation image format, plenty of old Japanese computers, Commodore computers, various old Apples, Amigas, ZX Spectrums, all the image formats used, or a lot of them, by these old ancient computers and the software that ran on them. 108 different Commodore 64 image formats. For I guess there's 108 different Commodore 64 image editors. I don't know.
Hey, if you got a TRS-80 and you saved a clip file which has a monochromatic resolution of 40 by 56.
Yeah, and you want to read that file because it's still just a file. It's just bits. You can get it onto a modern file system. It's not that hard to do.
Yeah.
How would you open it though? Here you go. You can open all those files. That's pretty awesome.
This is real cool.
So anyway, yeah.
In the meta moment, the Geek Nights Book Club book, the collected Murderbot Diaries. The most recent Murderbot just came out. I'm about a third of the way through it.
You finally passed me because I didn't start reading it. I read page 1.
It picks up right where the fifth book leaves off. Like literally
the big one.
Yeah, the big one. It's like weeks after that.
Yeah,
maybe days.
That's what I assumed was going to happen because book 6, spoilers, was a side story that didn't matter.
Yeah. Right? It was a good story. I like. It was basically a whodunit, and I felt really stupid for not realizing whodunit when the reveal happened.
Anyway,
yeah. So we'll give you a few weeks, maybe a month, because we'll miss some shows. But in December, we're gonna do the episode on the collected Murderbot Diaries. If you listen to Geek Nights, read the Murderbot Diaries. They ain't long. Like they're really quick reads. We're gonna talk about it.
All the other ones I read from the library, but this one's so new, I got the ebook, so I actually didn't look how long it is.
And we will, of course, be at PAX Unplugged on Friday, 5 p.m. Learn and play Whist, Hearts, and Wizard, the old WHW. And then on Saturday, 2:30 p.m. in the Crab God, Mastering Game Mechanics, Worker Placement. I'm about halfway done making slides for that worker placement panel.
I did the intro and I did Whist. I just got to do Hearts, which is going to be really quick. But then I got to do Wizard, which will be a little bit less quick. And then maybe add a couple slides of strategies, and then we're good. Then after PAX Unplugged, you should be aware that MagFest is going to happen. We're probably going to that.
I've submitted a ton of panels. I have a hotel, and theoretically, Mages is still happening. I got to email them again, but
yeah. And then just today, PAX East badges went on sale, and I'm going to PAX East.
I'm going to PAX East.
Yeah, so
I had a brief moment of panic though, because I was about to go to bed last night, and then you messaged me like, "Oh yeah, I got an East hotel room," and I thought I didn't submit any panels for East. Wait, when did panels happen for East? And I'm like, oh shit. So I go look, and I go to the East website, and I see panel submissions are closed. And for a moment, I think, have I, for the first time since the year 2008, fucked this up? And then I realized, no, the PAX East website hasn't even been updated for 2024 on that page. I'm good.
Yeah, they're putting the badges on sale,
way early.
Like, hey, yeah.
But PAX East, we're gonna be there. Probably enforce. I like enforcing PAX East. Otherwise, I guess we're not going to go to ZenkaiCon because once again, a convention overlaps with it, which is a shame because I like ZenkaiCon. But what are you going to do? If I have to choose between PAX East and ZenkaiCon, I'm sorry, but PAX East wins that one. So, yeah, let's get into it. Full disclosure, though, just in case anyone worries that anything we say might sound callous, because we're going to talk about this as if, it's a topic that some people might have experienced. I've never been laid off. I've never been fired. Every job I've ever had, I quit.
I was
Well, no, one job I had, I did not quit because I'm still at it.
I was semi laid off one time. So I was working at a place, and it was a shady place to begin with. It was basically the job I had before Broadway.com.
It was about as shady as that hospital job I had for different reasons, I feel like.
Anyway, the company was bought. I could talk a lot about that, but I'm just not going to because it's not relevant right now. But the company was bought by another company. And then shortly thereafter, right, there was like a trip, like a company trip to Puerto Rico for like team doing shit. It was like, around this time of year, right? Like early November-ish, right? Or like it was just after Thanksgiving, maybe. It was around this time of year. Regardless, I was like, I'm not going to some weird ass team building shit.
Yeah.
That's like, somehow the boss of the company that bought us had like some involvement, and it seemed like some sort of inside deal. It seemed sketch.
It felt weird at the time when you described what was going down.
Yeah, so I didn't go on that, but everyone else did. At least most other people did. They came back, it didn't seem like anyone had a negative experience, but people weren't raving about it either, so I didn't feel like I missed anything.
Yeah.
Regardless, it came back, and then they started laying people off at our little tiny one-floor company, not even a whole floor, like a half a floor, and the office started getting real quiet, and then people start, the 4 founding people, right? Some of them were leaving and or getting, whatever. It was basically, I was going to this office every day, and it was getting emptier and emptier and lonelier. It was like not hard. And somehow I was one of the last people still in there, not laid off or anything. Just going to this office, not entirely alone, but mostly. And obviously I was looking for the next job already.
Yep.
I'm not an idiot.
You're not like, they must like me.
I was already deep into the job hunting for a while, right? But I was just going through the motions of going there to collect money. There wasn't any work to do or anything. And they created some sort of like, they came over to me and they're like, hey, you should come in earlier. And I'm like, bro, that I'm like taking the train from upstate. This is when I get here, right? That's how it's going to be. And I think they did know that, right? But they were creating some sort of excuse to let me go with cause rather than lay me off, I guess, because it saved some money for them somehow.
Oh, it absolutely would, because then you don't get unemployment, and there's all sorts of nonsense.
I collected some unemployment, and then the unemployment person called me at a bad time, and then they cut off the other. But regardless, I had to do jobs. It didn't matter, but it was still a rigmarole. But effectively, I was laid off, right?
Yep.
Just not literally technically laid off.
My experience was weirder in that the closest I ever got to a layoff, and actually I wish I'd been laid off at that moment, and I was mad that I wasn't. I was working for that capital markets company a while ago, a few companies ago, and I was there from like near the beginning, and we had doubled in size. And then I think like the market crashed in 2008. You might remember that whole situation.
Yeah, this was 2008, yeah.
Yep. So I just remember one day, we were like the DevOps team before that was really a word, and trade operations. So we were like, it was one big floor, and everyone who wasn't an engineer sat in a big open plan, except the president had a glass-walled office. You could see him, but like you couldn't hear him and he couldn't hear you. HR had their own glass-walled office, and they had curtains they could pull up, but like no one else had curtains. The compliance office had a glass-walled room that was separate. And my group had a glass-walled room that was separate because we were yelling at each other all the time because it was DevOps. Also, we were nerds and we were bored all the time. So we're sitting in there, and like we just see like 2 of the people who work in our group of 5 people like get an email, and they like mumble at each other, and they're like, oh, I don't know. And they get up and they walk out like there's a meeting or something going on. And me and the other 2 super senior people are just sitting there doing our thing. And then we all kind of realize and we notice that our 2 guys have walked over to the HR office, and so have like 6 other people. So we all stand up, and then just as we're about to be like, what's going on? Our boss's boss like comes running into our little room, and he's like, okay, yeah, we got to talk right now. So yeah, they're laying a bunch of people off. Don't make a big deal about it. Please don't go out there and make a fuss.
Mm-hmm.
And they
sounds like I should go out there and make a fuss.
Oh yeah. So they laid some people off. So I immediately started looking for another job. And then those people were laid off because they were pretty new, but I don't think they got a severance. And then they laid off over the next several months about half the company in a very slow rolling wave. And every single person who got laid off because of our contracts and the way the company was got a huge severance. Like, had I been laid off, I would have gotten a 1.5 year salary. Yeah. And especially back then in 2008, that rim in 2008, that would have been the best possible thing that could have ever happened to me.
Look, the Oilers just fired their coach. That guy still gets paid. He just gets paid. He doesn't even have to coach hockey. It's like, thanks. I can now just sit at home and collect the same paycheck.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Like a crooked cop who gets put on paid administrative leave. Like, okay. Yeah. Or when you're in school and you get an out of school suspension, like, wait, so I don't have to go to school and I don't get in trouble for not going to school? Yes, I will accept my punishment. So I really wanted to be laid off. And over the next month, they laid off everyone in my area except me. And they basically, my boss said, yeah, you're like the best one. And you're going to stick around till the end. And I quit like a few weeks after I had that talk with them because I was actively looking for another job. But I was kind of holding off on accepting a job because I wanted to get laid off. But the dream was get laid off, fuck around for a couple months, start a new job while still getting paid for the old job. And
Cha-ching.
It went on so long that I had to quit instead because I couldn't wait that much longer.
Yep. So layoffs in general, right, are sort of like this two-edged coin, right? On the one hand, right, it's like there are people who cannot get another job so easily.
Yep.
Maybe there's not a large number of employers available in their area or for their skill set, or maybe just the world is changing and they work for the buggy whip manufacturer. I don't know. Right?
Because, I mean, our perspective is we still do some of the most in-demand work there is. So.
Yeah. And capitalism, which, of course, is the root problem, demands that if you don't work, you don't eat, right?
Yep.
Which is a bunch of bullshit because food, water, shelter should all be medicine, should all be human rights that you should get no matter if you work or not, or what you do.
There's a reason parent got laid off is like...
Education also.
The plot of a huge percentage of all the stories that people have told since industrialization.
Yep. But that is not currently the case in a large portion of the world. And so if your job is taken away from you and, it's not even something you did or did not do necessarily, right? It's something unrelated to you when you get laid off, right? If you did something bad, you would be fired with cause, right? Like,
like you shed on Deborah's desk or you didn't do your job at all.
Right. Something actually bad, you would be fired or, got the axe.
Yep.
But laid off is like, you didn't do anything wrong. You were just unlucky, unfortunate, working in the wrong industry, the wrong company, the wrong place, the wrong time. Usually it's someone else's fault. Like the business leaders fucked up and the company isn't making any money. Not because of you not working hard or maybe not right. It's not your fault in any way, but you're the one who now has to suffer. You are going to, if you don't have a ton of money or super high demand skills or have some other fortune, you're going to suddenly be in hard times and your life could be turned completely upside down.
Yep.
And it's complete horseshit. Right?
And there's an interesting nuance in that this is overlaid on the world around you in the sense that there's situation A company lays a bunch of people off, which is hard because if a company lays a bunch of people off, those people, suddenly there's a bunch of people with your skill set who are all looking for jobs in that same geographic place because you all worked at the same place that just did layoffs. But there's a separate kind of environment where all the companies in a sector are all laying people off at the same time, which is actually what's happening right now in technology. Like Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, all these companies, the kinds of companies me and Scott like to work for, like to work for in that they pay a lot and it's within our skill set. Not that we like
I
to
don't work for them because they're too big, but anyway.
Yeah. But the kinds of companies we work for, they're all laying off at the same time, which is even worse. Because imagine you have a resume that has XYZ on it, and suddenly you need to find a job at the exact same moment. 50,000 other people with the same goddamn resume are looking for the exact same kind of job because there are now fewer jobs of that type. Full stop.
Yep.
And the worst part is that kind of layoff also fucks over the people who don't get laid off because let's say you work for a company and you're not getting paid enough and it's not great and maybe you want another job. and you're not happy. And maybe your coworkers aren't happy either. But then all the other companies that do the kind of thing you do layoffs. Suddenly your company knows, none of those people are going to quit because none of the other companies are going to hire them. Nobody's hiring anymore. In fact, we could, if they're an evil company, we could make their situation worse and make them work harder. Because what are they going to do? Quit? Good luck. There's layoffs.
Yep, it's not a good time right now. You can't lose your job right now. You won't be able to find another one. That means we can put the screws on you, right? Of course, that's not a great idea because, you want to retain employees generally. If they're ones you want to keep, you want to retain them, right?
Yep.
Because it actually costs you money it's difficult to get good employees, right? So it's like, when you're a company laying off, it's like if you're not just going out of business or trying to, right? If you're
or not just like fucking up like Twitter, but like normal layoffs.
Right. It's like if you actually want to stay in business and recover and do good, then you want to keep the high quality employees that would be difficult to obtain and get rid of the ones that maybe don't matter to your core businesses so much. Usually what happens is a lot of companies, especially in the tech sector, are going to mostly lay off people who are working on new projects, unprofitable departments, support employees,
which I will say, total aside, in technology, especially in larger companies, going after support employees for layoffs early is, in my professional opinion, the worst fucking thing you can do. Those are actually your most important employees, but the business people often don't realize it.
Obviously. But yeah.
We fired Joey Jojo, the only guy who knows how that one Linux thing works.
Right. So Google, for example, might lay off all the people working on like some rando app that they're going to shut down anyway.
Yep.
Right. But they're not going to lay off the people who work on search because that's where all the fucking money is. The ads people, the maps people, the things that actually work and make them a lot of money. You're not going to see the layoffs in those departments. Right. But the Google News people, like, they don't, right. They're holding on.
Yep.
Somehow I can't believe Google News still exists.
Google News kind of doesn't. Have you gone to it recently? It doesn't like really work anymore.
Yeah, I know. I'm surprised that it's still up is what I'm saying.
Yeah, like it literally, like, go to it, it like doesn't work.
Apple News isn't great either. But complete tangent. If someone wants to make a competitor like of the normal news aggregator as opposed to like, RSS reader style, to compete directly with Google News, Apple News, like the competition is pretty weak. You could beat them easily, probably.
Yeah, like, I went back to FARC.
Yeah. All right, anyway, so why do these companies do the layoffs, right? It's like, did they hire people too fast? Sometimes, yes.
Well, in the current tech layoffs, that is the primary cause of all the super big tech company layoffs is over the last several years, they have been hiring like crazy for a bunch of reasons that I can't edge into giving financial advice. I'm going to be a little vague here, but broadly, in my personal opinion, based on, you can read websites to verify this, money was cheap and they were hiring to try to basically expand into a bunch of different markets that looked pretty hot, partly because money was cheap. And all those markets kind of dried up simultaneously, coupled with a couple other things going on. So as the COVID situation wound down and the economy spun back up again in some ways, not all of those sectors actually grew the way they expected. And two, the adpocalypse is still happening in slow motion, and a lot of those companies were funding all those hires with their ad-supported businesses that suddenly aren't making money. So a lot of this right now was overhiring.
Right. But the thing is, it's like, okay, these companies, though, are still profitable.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, but yet they're laying people off. And
a lot of them are laying off and simultaneously hiring.
Right. So layoffs really is, if a company is unprofitable, right, you're not making money, and, it's like, and you can't like just decide to increase revenues. You actually have to succeed at something to get more revenues and then therefore more profits, right? Yep. So if your projects aren't working out, maybe you're a game developer, publisher, and your games flop, or you're making movies and they flop. Yep. It's like you lost money. You end up in a situation where if you want to be profitable, the only thing that you can just decide to do to keep your company from just completely shuttering and going out of business, it's to lay people off, which cuts labor costs, right? Yep. Which is usually labor is the biggest cost at any company, period. So that's the core reason. But the second reason is like, well, wait a minute. what if you're profiting? Why would you lay people off? Well, this is because we have a stock market, right? And so investors are the people the company is serving, not the employees. And so when you're serving the investors, it's like, well, you know, if the stock price isn't going up, or dividends aren't giving the investors any kind of return, even if the company's profitable, the investors aren't going to be happy. They need the stock price to go up, right? And so if you're a company, again, you can't just decide to get revenues.
Unless you're a monopoly. Rockefeller could just decide.
Yes, if I could decide to get revenues, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So what you can always do when you're a company is lay people off, cut costs, and guess what? Your company is now more profitable. You make your earnings report, and it's a lot better than it would have been.
Yep.
And therefore, you beat your earnings estimate, and the stock price goes up maybe, and now the investors are happy. And basically, you know, if a company was serving its employees and not its investors and owners, then instead of laying people off, like if it was profitable, they would be sharing the wealth amongst all the employees. Maybe you'd slow down hiring or something if it was a bad time, right? But when it's the investors, it's like, well, we just fucking ruin people's lives. You don't give a shit. It makes us richer. And that's how that goes.
Yep. And big companies especially, this will happen partly because a small company that does like one thing, if you lay people off, you are basically... It's almost like burning your reserves, like you're burning the fuel that you would need to be able to succeed in the future if you make it through that rough time. But if you're a big company, you lay the people off working in the part of the company that you're just going to jettison anyway. So I would say a moral here is that, one, across the board, you can't let companies get too big or do too many different things. Like that is one of the biggest problems with capitalism today, is that companies can get too big and do too many things, which gives them that level of flexibility, and that is not a good flexibility for society.
Well, we're going to try to do new thing X. Let's hire a whole bunch of people to work on that. Oh, we decided that's not working out. You know what? We're just going to get rid of all those people. Bye.
Yep. Now, in the old days, a company would do an IPO and like form to do that new thing. And those employees and that company would ostensibly try to succeed at doing that thing and really try to make it work. They wouldn't a year in just say fuck it and fire everybody if they still had a revenue stream. They'd try to make it keep going.
Yeah. Now the company might go out of business completely, right?
Yeah.
And then that would obviously have the same result of everyone losing their jobs. But at least, you know, it's the same result for the employees, right? It's like you're now in the same shit as if you had been laid off, but is just less cruelty to that in some sense.
And there's
right?
more incentive among everyone involved, especially managers and leaders and investors, to try to keep it going. An investor in Joey Jojo Shabadoo's Buggy Whip company really wants it to not go out of business and might support them more than an investor in, say, Google, who might say, what if you just get rid of Gmail? What's that doing for you?
Yeah, exactly. So the advice for actual life. Well, if you get laid off, it fucking sucks.
Yep.
Right? Unless you're incredibly fortunate and you just have a bunch of money, or you know you can get a job super easily.
If you have a techie kind of, or at least office style job, I have very specific advice. Even if you like your current job a lot and have no complaints about it, always be testing the waters and keeping an eye out for other jobs. Like, just always be looking, even if you don't take them, even if you don't interview, just always be like occasionally low-key job searching, just in case.
Right.
That's
always right. Be paying attention to what's going on in your company's biz, even if you're not directly getting involved in office politics. Like you could usually feel when check out the vibe check of what's going down lately.
Like
right?
if you see the people who look and act and have the kind of jobs that I have, they're all suddenly like talking to everyone else less, talking to each other more, grumbling a lot, having a lot of private meetings, and that's not been the history before. Yeah. Something's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I've never been surprised about anything that happened at an employer, but it's usually I see that something was happening, right? And then it's like, that's what it was. Or something happens and it's like, oh, and then it's like, there were signs I missed, right? It's like I could have seen that one coming, right? It's like if I would have just paid more attention or thought about it harder, I knew what was going down.
If you're a GeekNights listener who is in the level of being in the know and having some power, like a middle manager, like I'm actually in that position and have been for most of my career. If you know things, tell people and be transparent. If you work for a company and you are told not to be transparent with people who should know things, one, huge red flag that you are also in deep shit.
Yep.
So if you have the power, like if you find out that there's likely layoffs coming, and you have employees who report to you, or you have a way to like tell people in a way that like isn't against a contract or a specific rule,
just tell them in a way that can't be traced to you.
Yep.
Right? Because it's like a lot of times, like if you're in such a high position that you know about layoffs before, say, the stock market does, you could get in trouble if you reveal that, potentially legal trouble if you were to reveal that information. But if nobody knows you revealed it and you just reveal it to the employees to whom it might matter, it's like that is a noble endeavor. Just make sure there's no way to know that you are the one who did it. Don't send an email on the company email or the company Slack, right?
This is one of those times where Scott and I both generally avoid hanging out.
Take an employee out to coffee or something.
Yep, I was about to say, because we tend to not make strong relationships with a lot of people we work with. Like, my work life is very separate from my real life. That's an important thing. But if you're in a position of power in a company, it is prudent to have some amount of outside of work communication channels. Like, I go out to drinks with people, even if I don't necessarily want to go hang out in a bar with coworkers and have drinks, because we all will share information pretty regularly. And that's for a decade. I've been doing this across multiple jobs. And I've never been surprised by anything as a result. And otherwise, you want advice on how to like make this not a problem anymore? In the very least, if you live in the U.S., vote for Democrats. Like, that'll get us closer. If you don't live in the U.S., vote for whatever the leftist party is as opposed to the rightist party. But
too far to the left. Just go mostly to the left.
No, all the way. Full communism, capital C. I absolutely mean that.
Okay.
But I guess if we're getting into the political theory, not revolutionary communism. That doesn't mean revolutionary communism is a very specific political concept, and it's stupid. It is absolutely stupid.
Anyway,
authoritarian communism, also not a great idea.
The thing that I would say that you should do is when the thing you can do that would be the most beneficial to society is pay attention to the news about layoffs, and then when they occur, think about if there's anything you can do to help the people who had been laid off. Are you in that industry? Can you hire people?
Yep.
Right?
Games industry is really good about this. Every time there's a game company that like shuts down or does big layoffs, I'm in a lot of private game industry discords and chats. There's like a process of like every Discord has this like system or the channel of, hey, this company just had layoffs. Here's all the resumes. Like, everybody go through them. Let's try to hire all these people.
Yeah. The other thing is, if you are laid off, or there was an industry that had layoffs, even if you don't have a company, you could try to gather many of those people together and form a new endeavor.
Yep,
right?
I've seen that succeed. I've known people who have done that and done really well for themselves.
Yep. Whether it's leaving or being laid off, right? For example, Valve is a bunch of people who like all left Microsoft, right?
Yep.
Go do that, right? So, if they had been laid off from Microsoft, it wouldn't really have made a difference. They could have achieved the same thing, right?
Yep.
By just, breaking off and teaming up on their own, right?
You got to be pretty entrepreneurial for that. Like, I'm actually not. Like, I kind of like having a salary instead of having to hustle.
I'm just saying is that there are several places, there are a lot of businesses that basically exist as employees that, spun out of one place, went out on their own, succeeded, and even sometimes the original place will like buy them back in and shit, right?
Right.
So, if you're really not working for a time, even if you can't bring in any revenues, it's like, try to work on something, right? Call up those people who are probably also not working yet, and you might be able to make something happen. It's a frequent success story. So.
Yep.